This week on I Watched This as an Adult Movie Reviews, I review the 1985 adventure comedy, The Goonies.
What is the perfect movie franchise? Does such a thing truly exist? The License to Watch podcast sets out to answer that age-old question. Join comedians Matt McGregor, Harris McCabe, and Colin Shaw as they dissect your favorite film franchises one movie at a time. Along for the ride is a different film industry guest for every episode. Listen as the boys play judge, jury, and executioner and decide which of your favorite movie franchises are worthy of a license to watch.
Wait a minute!
Steven Spielberg presents The Goonies, a Richard Donner film.
Time, chunk.
Hey, Mike found the map! Whoa, do you guys realize what we could do? I don't want to go on any more of your crazy Goonie adventures.
Meet Mikey,
I gotta go to the bathroom.
Brand, Andy,
Shame! Come on, Fran, slipper the tongue.
That's disgusting. No, I can't even look.
Mouth,
I gotcha! Now get out from behind there, you're ruining the painting. You're ruining my joke!
Stephanie, Data,
Booty bangers! Ow! Guys, isn't that neat?
and Chunk.
It's locked. Thanks, Chunk.
They call themselves The Goonies. They've stumbled onto a legend, but they're not alone.
Chunk, I hope that was your stomach.
No. That's the it. Sounds like Kong.
Discover what they uncover.
It was full of rubies and emeralds and diamonds.
The lost map.
Whoa! There's the start of the tunnel.
The secret caves.
Hey, Mikey! You can hear me! Run! Run! They're coming after you! Juggler!
The hidden clues.
Mikey!
The treacherous traps.
Hello, Sheriff. I'm at the Lighthouse Lounge, and I want to report, a murder.
Just like that last prank about all those little creatures that multiply when you throw water on them.
Take the oath.
They're here! They're here! Somebody's coming!
Join the adventure as Steven Spielberg presents The Goonies, a Richard Donner film.
The Goonies from 1985. Let's get straight into the technical. This movie was directed by the late, great Richard Donner. It was written by Chris Columbus. The budget for this movie was $19 million. It brought in $125 million at the box office. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 76%. Take it or leave it for whatever that is. Let's talk about how I saw this movie as a child. Believe I saw this movie at my grandmother's house. I had to be like no more than 5 years old, like 5 years old, maybe 6 years old. But I remember seeing it at her house, and I remember instantly like falling in love with this movie. Like it captivated me, like it caught my eye. Like this movie had like an adventure element and a whimsical spirit that like any kid would love. Like it's just got that thing that attracts kids to it, Like it's like an ice cream truck. I don't know. You know? It's the ice cream truck of movies. I don't know. It just draws kids in. But yeah, I used to love this movie as a kid. But let's see how much I like this movie as an adult. I like how this movie starts off because like you meet the Goonies and the villains simultaneously. Like there's a car chase with the villains, and you have like the kids in the background of that. Like that was like brilliant directing by Richard Donner. It's not a lot because like it's not a lot of backstory. You're not wasting your time with like 15 minutes of backstory learning these characters and all this stuff. You just like meet the villains. You meet the Fratellis. Like the Fratellis break out of prison. And like there's a car chase, and then behind all of that, in the background of all of that, is the Goonies. Like all the Goonies, you meet each one as the car chase is going on. But like I just thought that was brilliant. That was very, very brilliant. A lot of movies should I don't want to say steal that, but it's a great like thing to do when you don't want to waste a lot of time. You know, when you don't want to waste a lot of time building characters and all that stuff. Like, just do something where, like, you meet all the characters at the same time with something else is going on that affects all their lives. You know, like, because that's what happened. Like, you meet all these characters and, like, all these characters come together eventually. And, like, I like that. But just brilliant way of directing that scene. Richard Donner is just... It was like... Richard Donner is just a fucking genius, man. But let's talk about the kids. Like, first off, I love how they just let these kids be kids. I love that because I feel like nowadays, like, they won't let kids be kids. They just want kids to be a parody of what they think kids are. Like, in movies, it's just like, and a lot of the times, like, it's not real kids. It's just, like the, as much as I love Stranger Things, like, those kids are kind of weird. Like, they don't act like kids. You know, as much as I love, like I said, much as I love the Stranger Things kids, they're great actors, but they don't act like children. They act like grown-ups in children's bodies, and that's not how kids act. Like, these are like kids, because like they're about the same, like these kids are about the same age as the Stranger Things kids. They're about like the age range is probably like 12 to like 16 years old. I think that's the age ranges of the kids. They're like about like 12 to 16. And like they act like real kids. They act like real kids. They act like real teenagers. You're like, I like how natural these kids act. Like it reminded me of hanging out with my friends. Like these kids are just goofy. They got potty mouths. Like they think they know the world, but they really don't know nothing. You know, just like real kids, man. Like they think they know the world, but they don't know nothing. You know, they really don't have a clue in the world of what the world is. They really don't. But the initial Goonies like are all like neighborhood kids that like hang out with each other. And like they kind of remind me of the Little Rascals a little bit. Like they kind of do. Like there's a little bit of Little Rascals element in this movie with these kids. Like they're very mischievous. They're always getting into something. The initial Goonies are Mikey, played by Sean Astin, Brad, played by Josh Brolin, Mouth, played by Corey Feldman, Data, played by Ki-Hoo Kwan, and Chunk, played by Jeff Cohen. And the plot of this movie is that the neighborhood that they live in is going under. Like, everybody's losing their home. I think they're gonna plow down all the homes and make like a country club. Like, they're gonna make a country club. They're gonna make a golf course on their land, which sounds like gentrification to me, but I'm not having that conversation right now. So, it was like, this is not what this podcast is about. But the kids find a map that leads to buried treasure. Mikey believes that if they find that treasure, they could save their neighborhood. So Mikey convinces the other kids to go look for the treasure, except his brother Brad, who doesn't believe that the treasure exists. He's just like, man, he was like, I don't believe in that stuff, man. Those are stories. Those are myths. He's just like, right? He doesn't believe. So, like Brad's the oldest. So like, and he's kind of like watching them. He's kind of like brother / babysitter. So like, they got to get away from Brad. So, they got to find a way to get away from Brad, because like Brad's gonna rat on them if they go and try to find the treasure. Go to this place, he's gonna rat on them. He's gonna tell on them. So, so they got to find a way to get away from Brad. So they do that. Brad also has to so pretty much like Brad has to go find his brother and his friends. Because like they tie him up. They actually tie him up. The mom comes back and she finds him tied up, and like the other kids are gone, and she just pretty much like, you got to go find your brother. Like, if you don't go find your brother, you're gonna be in big trouble. So he has to go find Mikey and his friends. But like, another thing about this, like, Brad's also getting bullied. We don't go very much into that, but they hint at the fact that Brad's getting bullied. Like, he's getting bullied by this kid on the football team, like, who carries on the long-standing tradition of psychopathic bullies in movies, which is still going on to this day. Like bullies that try to kill you, because like he pretty much tries to kill Brad. He tries to kill Brad by like dumping him off of, like, Brad's on a bike, and he pretty much like dumps Brad off of a cliff on a bike. You don't know if he's gonna live or die. I was like, what type of bullies are these in these movies, man? Like, I used to get bullied. I used to get bullied a lot, but I don't think any of my bullies ever tried to kill me. They just beat the shit out of me. It was either like they beat me up, or when they couldn't beat me up anymore because I got better at fighting eventually. They couldn't beat me up. I got better at fighting eventually, so they just made fun of me. Like, there was never murder, like, going on. Like, they never had the intentions of killing me. So like, it was just like beating me up, and then like they figured out, oh man, he got better at fighting, he could kick my ass, so they just started making fun of me after that. Like, started making fun of what I liked and how I dressed and how I talked and all this stuff. And after that, it wasn't there was never like, oh, we gonna kill him. I never had like my life threatened by a bully ever. I mean, like, they could have beat me to death, but it never got to that point. They just wanted to beat me up. But anyway, like, these goddamn psychopathic bullies, man. Like, I don't know what these writers went through when they were kids, but I never went through that to that extent. Like, never went through that. Anyway, like, the boys run into the villains, the Fratellis, and like, these are some scary people. these are some scary people. Anne Ramsey, Joe Pantoliano. He has a hard name to pronounce. Excuse me. Joey Pants. Like that's his industry name. Everybody calls him Joey Pants. I'm gonna call him Joey Pants. Joey Pants. You may know him as Cypher from The Matrix. You may know him as the captain, the lieutenant from Bad Boys. Like he played all those characters. He's on The Sopranos. He did all of that. And Robert Davey, they play those characters. And like they really are not to be fucked with. Like they are some ruthless individuals. They be hiding bodies and shit. like just hiding bodies in freezers and dumping bodies. Like they killing feds and shit. Just like they are, like I say, ruthless individuals. I love the dialogue in this movie and like how it's delivered. Like it's not really like the dialogue. I love how it's delivered because the kids talk over each other and it sounds more natural than just one kid talks and waits for the other kid to talk, because that's not how kids talk in real life. Like they talk over each other. They even being in like a classroom, like it's like a whole bunch of kids. You ever been in a function where it's a whole bunch of kids? Like it's a bunch of kids talking over each other. They always talking. They always talking. They never shut the fuck up. And I like that these kids don't do that either. Like they just talking over each other. I love it. Later in the movie, the boys are joined on the adventure by two girls who live in the neighborhood. Andy, played by Carrie Green, and Steph, played by Martha Plimpton. Brand also has a crush on Andy, by the way. Like that's his girl right there. There's a good portion of the movie where Chunk gets separated from the group, and he gets separated kind of like in a messed up way. Cause like the kids find a dead body. They find one of the dead bodies in the freezer, and they leave Chunk in the freezer with the body. They don't notice that they left him in the freezer, but they leave him in the freezer. Like I'm just like, poor little Chunk. Poor little Chunk. But like he ends up becoming like the standout character in this movie. Like whenever you think of Goonies, like Chunk is the first thing that comes to mind. Like whenever you think of this movie, like he's kind of the mascot. He's the mascot of this movie. Like he's not in the movie very much, honestly. Like honestly, he's like in the first half. There's a good portion of the movie where Chunk is not there. Like I said, he gets separated from the group. Like the Fratellis catch him. They throw him in like a basement somewhere. They're about to kill him. Like they're about to cut his hand off. I was like, oh my god. I was like, this is they're getting hardcore. I was like, I don't remember this. But yeah, man, there's a good portion of the movie where he's not in it. Like he don't go on the adventure, the adventure with the rest of the kids. Like he ain't not down, like, cause like they get stuck in a cave. He ain't down in the cave with them where all the good stuff happens. Like he's not down there. Like he's up there with the Fratellis. And like you don't see him for a good, see him for a good 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. You don't see him for a good while. But like I say, he's the most recognizable character in this whole movie. Everybody knows Chunk. But the Fratellis also have a deformed brother named Sloth, who I might say like he's probably the second most recognizable thing in this movie. And he's not really in the movie very often. Like Sloth's time, I was about to say something else about Sloth until like I really saw the amount of time that Sloth is in this movie. He's not in this movie a lot. Like, he might have, I want to say, because you initially see him, because Mikey finds him when, like, they break into, like, the kids break into the Fratelli's, like, restaurant, which is a front for murder and racketeering and money laundering. They do all that shit. But, you know, but, because, like, Mikey initially finds him, and, like, you don't really see what he looks like. You just hear him, and he's like, "Whoa!" He's just going crazy and shit. Mikey sees him, and he's just like, "Oh shit, he's like, what the heck is that?" And he just runs out. But, like, that's your first glimpse of Sloth. And then Chunk sees Sloth. That's, like, the first time you see Sloth, when the Fratellis throw Chunk in the basement with Sloth. That's the first time you see him. And then towards the end, when Sloth comes and, like, saves the kids from the Fratellis, like, that's it. Like, he's got, like, 3 scenes. And I don't know if that was by design. I don't know if that was by nature, because, like, Sloth is a hideous looking being. And I guess because, like, this movie's for kids, and I guess they didn't want to scare kids by having that character on screen for so long. Because I know initially when I saw Sloth, I was kind of scared of him. I was like, what the heck? But like I said, second most recognizable, the 2 characters that aren't in this movie very often are the 2 most recognizable characters in this whole damn movie. Impact. Just Impact. That's what I think. Because if you ask me, like, Data is the real MVP of this movie to me. Because I don't think they would have gotten as far as they did without Data. Like, Data was dope. I like Data. Data is like Batman. Data had a gadget for any situation they was in. Like, for any situation they was in, Data had a gadget for it. Like, Data was the MVP. Data kept them alive. Like, they would have been dead without Data. You know? Data is the true MVP. He the real MVP. Plus he's the only Goonie of color. So, like, I had to root for Data. Like, I wish there was a black Goonie. There's not a black Goonie. I wish there was, but it's the 80s, and black people are invisible in the 80s. Like, I've reviewed a lot of 80s movies on this podcast, and like I said, like, we are non-existent in movies in the 80s, unless we make them. Unless we make the movies, they don't give a fuck about us. Still, like, we are in the background. Like, they do not care about black people in the 80s. Like they are blatant with it. Like, they just blatantly do not care about black people in the 80s. I guess it reflects the 80s, because they were blatantly not giving a shit about black people in the 80s in general. But you know, but yeah, man, like, so, like, there's no black Goonie. Like, I wish there was, because, like, I had to vicariously live through Data, a little Asian boy. You know, like, I'm not Asian, you know, so, but he's the only Goonie of color. So, like, I got to root for Data. So, but I'm glad those days are over and black people are getting a lot more roles. There's a black kid on Stranger Things. He has agency. Like, they don't treat him just like the token black friend. You know, like, he has his own storyline going. He gets a girlfriend. You know, like my man Lucas. I root for my man Lucas. My man Lucas he had a girlfriend, a white girl. Like, they let him have a white girl in the 80s. You know, which is something that didn't happen in 80s movies. I'm not advocating just, like, the fact that he had a white girl, but, like, it's just like, wow. They let him have a white girl in something that's set in the 80s. That is wild, and a hot one too. Like they gave him a hot white girl, but they didn't give him an ugly one. But anyway, anyway, yeah, man. But that's who I had to root for. I had to root for Data. Like I said, glad those days are over. Like I said, we got Lucas on Stranger Things doing his thing, representing. That's my man's right there. I had to root for Data. Like, even though I was more of a Mikey as a kid, I was real, like, wholesome, like, real wholesome, sweet kid. You know, like, I wasn't really a troublemaker child. I was very wholesome and sweet and, like, whimsical type of kid. You know, like, I wasn't a kid that, like, got called into the principal's office, or like a kid that I was a pretty good kid growing up. I had my little hiccups, as all kids do. Like, not kids aren't perfect. Like, Mikey's not perfect either, because he does his little dirt too. But but every kid has a little dirt on him. But for the most part, I wasn't a bad kid. I like how at the end of the movie, like, the villains turn into the, like, Saturday morning cartoon villains. like Mrs. Fratelli kind of turns into, like, Rita Repulsa towards the end. Where, like, she's talking about, like, because, like, whenever, like, Rita Repulsa would talk about the Power Rangers, she would have, like, weird names for them. She's like, those power twerps, because they're supposed to be kids. Like, the Power Rangers are supposed to be children. So she was just like, those power twerps, and she used to call them that, those little power punks. She used to, like, Rita Repulsa used to call the Power Rangers that. So, like, Miss Fratelli, she calls, like, the Goonies, like, brats. Like, I think because she throws Andy, because, like, they're on a pirate ship, and she makes Andy walk the plank, and then Brad jumps in, and she's like, well, that's 2 brats down. She said, she calls them brats. But yeah, like, they turn into Saturday morning cartoon villains at towards the end, and they just get beat up and like and just outsmarted. Like, they were like cold-hearted killers at the beginning of the movie, but at the end of the movie, they're just so freaking incompetent. I guess because, like, at the end of the day, this is a kids movie. Like, you can't make them too bloodthirsty. Like, they can't just be like these cold-hearted, bloodthirsty villains, because these kids wouldn't have survived if they were. Like, all of them kids would be dead. So I understand why they had to tone them down so the kids would have a better chance of defeating them. So that's what that was. Overall, man, I still enjoyed this movie. I had a blast watching this movie. This movie's still fun. Like I said, Richard Donner did a great job directing these kids and making them feel real. I love the camaraderie between the kids. They feel like real friends. Like, I like at one point when, like, they're going into the Fratellis, when they're going into the Fratellis restaurant, which is a front, by the way. I like that Mikey and Data, like, there's like this little cute like moment with Mikey and Data, like, they're like hugging each other and like they like holding each other and like got these arms around each other's shoulders and like they just skipping. They just skipping. I was like, that's kids. I'm like, they made them feel real. I'm like, they real. They're like, those are real kids. But yeah, man, like, I like that element of those kids. Like, they made them feel like real friends. It's amazing to see how successful, like, some of those kids went on to be. I mean, like, we just watched Ke Huy Quan win an Oscar. Josh Brolin and Sean Astin, like, went on to have very successful adult careers in acting. You could probably call them Nepo babies too, though. By the way, that's probably a reason why, because Josh Brolin is James Brolin's son, and his stepmother is Barbara Streisand. That could help too. And Sean Astin, his mom was this old actress named Patty Duke, and his dad is the original Gomez Addams, John Astin. John Astin is his father. So they kind of got the nepotism on their side too, but very successful adult careers for both Josh and Sean. Jeff Cohen is a successful lawyer now. You know, like he out here making moves. Jeff Cohen is the guy that played Chunk. He lost weight. He looks like Jason Statham now. Look up pictures of Jeff Cohen now. He looks just like goddamn Jason Statham now. Oh, you know, it's amazing because he was a fat kid. He was a little fat kid that they made fun of, and now he looks like Jason Statham. I was like, he's the most fit, good-looking one. You know, you know. Like he looks like the transporter now. But yeah, man, like he's doing that now. He out here making moves. Corey Feldman is a Michael Jackson impersonator. You know, like they all found success in their own right, man. They all found some sort of success. But yeah, man, I definitely recommend this movie. If you haven't seen it in a long time, go watch it. It's fun. Great movie. If you've never seen it, what are you waiting for? Go see it right now. Go watch it. This movie gets a strong 5 out of 5. Perfect movie. Join me next week when I will be talking about 1993's The Sandlot. Until next time, peace.